Okay, in this lesson today, we're going to talk about this company called Michell Wool that is in Australia. And we talk about wool. Yes, we're talking about Baba Black Sheep. Have you any wool? So, what we're going to take a look at is how this company realized that it was using so much water and how, with it being in Australia and Australia being in a large drought, similar to the one California has gone through, and much of Australia is desert. Water is a very precious resource there. So, in order to do what they need to with the wool, they need to have vast amounts of water. So, they realized they had to change some of their ways. They had to be more sustainable, and they had to be a good partner in their community so they were not using up all the water in the area. Okay? So, this talks about in the rangeland of Australia, sheep get frightfully dirty. They roam the outback among all manner of plants, trees, and scrub. They loll in the dirt. They sleep on the ground. They roll in their own poop. They only shower if it happens to rain. Okay, so sheep are outside. Their wool is very thick, and anything they come in contact gets inside that wool. So, like dirt, poop that they roll around in, everything else, it's pretty nasty in there. And they also have this oil that's produced inside the wool that attracts dirt to it. So it's basically this hot mess of stuff in the wool. So when they go to shear a sheep, which is basically cutting off all the wool that's been grown out, they have to really clean this wool a lot to get all this gross stuff out of it. Okay. Australia is known for being the largest producer of wool in the world. The fresh wool is grubby. A specialized industry exists to clean it before it can be woven in everything from haute couture to bedding, carpeting. Okay, anything that we use wool for. Not many people out there wearing wool sweaters anymore because they're very itchy and scratchy. But there's different fashion items that are made out of wool scarves, wool hats. Okay, sometimes wool coats. You can make bedding out of wool. You can make carpeting out of it. So it's a high demand item. Okay. So Michell Wool has been washing wool in Australia since 1870. And the big Michell Wool scouring plant is in Salisbury, which is a suburb north of Adelaide. And they use about a megaliter of water. A megaliter is 1 million liters. Okay. So that is a lot of water. Okay, 1 million liters of water. That's the same thing as saying that's how much 750 families use in their homes for showering, cooking, everything else. So this company uses in one day the same amount of water that 750 families use. Okay, so they're using an excessive amount. So the just sheared wool arrives and they have to clean everything out. Okay, and the oil I was talking about is called lanolin. Okay, the lanolin that's in the wool, they call it greasy wool because it has dirt and it has this lanolin, so it needs to be cleaned out. Okay, the machine that cleans the wool is a long line of connected stainless steel tanks and conveyors called a scour, which stretches more than half a football field. Wool gets unbaled and dumped into a tank at one end of the scour. It's washed in cold water, lightly agitated, wrung out. And it moves up the belt to another tank where they repeat the process. Okay, and then they have to get it into water that's 150 degrees because 150 degrees is warm enough that it can dissolve all the lanolin and it makes the wool better, makes the wool last longer. So this is a process of basically it's going up this like conveyor belt and going into different tanks and being washed at different stages. Okay. The inside of the Michell scouring factory smells like a farm because of all the smelly stuff that's in that wool. Michell uses a smartly counterintuitive washing technique. So counterintuitive means the opposite of what we would think would be the best method. Okay, the cleanest water pours in at the end of the scouring process onto the cleanest wool, and the water moves backward along the scour as the wool moves forward, so that the dirtiest water is used to rinse the dirtiest wool. Okay, so the last step of the process is where they get the clean water. Okay, so let's say there's 10 different tanks along the way that the water goes into. So tank number 10 is the last one. That's the cleanest water. It's washing it the last time before the wool's ready. Then that water goes from tank 10 into tank 9 because now it's a little bit dirty because there might have been some last little things that it picked up away. Then it goes to tank 8 and so on. As it works backwards, it gets dirtier and dirtier. So they use the dirtiest water to clean the dirtiest wool because does it really matter? It's dirty wool anyway. Okay, so that's why they call it counterintuitive. From January to July, they run the scours 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But wool is no longer as popular as it once was, and the Salisbury plant uses only a quarter of its floor space. Each of the two scouring lines is running at about 2/3 of capacity. They remain well known. Armani used them in the spring 2009-2010 collection, and the firm remains not just one of the largest wool scours in Australia, but a part of Australian lore. Every ship that leaves Australia probably had wool from Michell's on it, the Sydney Sun Herald quoted an Australian wool official saying in 1989. Okay, it is possible to know exactly how dirty the wool coming in is. They weigh it before it's scoured, and then they weigh it after. On average, the yield from raw wool is 55%. So when the wool arrives there, it weighs 100 pounds, the greasy wool, before they've washed it. And then by the end, it's only 55 pounds of usable wool. So 45 pounds of that 100 pounds is dirt, debris, poop, and lanolin. So pretty disgusting. So hence the importance of water. They need to clean all that out. So each pound of wool requires 3.6 gallons of water to get clean. And that's twice the amount of what it takes for your washing machine to use at home. It takes a lot of water to scour wool. And although Salisbury gets just 18 inches of rain a year, okay, that's usually what we get on, like rainy months. That's like a 1 month here. We can get about 18 inches of rain. Whereas for them, that's what they get for the entire year. Okay, that's less than Flagstaff, Arizona. So making it the comparison, it's one of the driest states in all of Australia. So until a few years ago, they were using the same water everybody was using in the town to shower and cook and drink with. And when you see how dirty the wool is, when you see how dirty the water gets, it seems absurd to be washing greasy wool in tap water. Okay, they were using in excess of a gigaliter of water a year, which is 1 billion liters, 3 times what they use today. And they asked themselves, is this a sensible place to be? Like, is this smart? And now that people aren't buying as much wool from them, they have to be even more effective in what they're spending money on so that they don't go out of business. So they don't want to price themselves out of the market, is what he said. Outside of their farms, Michell is one of the largest single users of water in South Australia. And they were worried about water scarcity. If we start running out of water, like, what's going to happen? They might go out of business. So they had to come up with a plan to do something that would make it more effective for them